In the history of the National Football League, 8 teams that were coming off of Super Bowl victories went on to have a losing record the following season. This is called the Super Bowl hangover. How does a team go from winning it all to a losing record in just one season? It involves a variety of factors. In some cases, either the coaching staff or roster went through changes during the offseason, or in some cases, both occurring at the same time. The defending champions getting caught with the injury bug the following season, or the defending champions running it back with the same coaching staff and roster, but were nowhere near as good the following season. If you exclude the strike seasons, the worst record of any defending Super Bowl champion was the 1999 Denver Broncos. After a 6-10 season with a ton of excuses for why they had the worst Super Bowl hangover, you figured it would be a while before that record was broken. And that was proven right, as it wouldn't be for 23 seasons. The 2022 Los Angeles Rams now hold the worst record of any defending Super Bowl team at 5-12. It was a short steep fall from grace for the team that not only went 12-5 the previous season, but went all in for a Super Bowl victory. What's going on, guys? It's your boy Darian, and if you like what you see here today, subscribe to Raving Sports for more football content. The off-season addition of Matthew Stafford, along with season additions Von Miller and Odell Beckham Jr., and since they already had superstar players in Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, and Jalen Ramsey, this was going to be considered a boomer bust type season. Anything other than the Super Bowl ring would be considered a massive failure. Thankfully, at season's end, they hoisted the Lombardi Trophy.
Oh my God! Yes! Yes! Yes!
All of those moves led to short-term success, but the next question was, what type of price were the Rams about to pay? You see, those moves to get Matthew Stafford and Von Miller cost the Rams major draft capital, not just for one, but 2 straight seasons. As the offseason progressed, you began to see key departures. While Von Miller and OBJ seemed like the biggest departures on paper, it was actually Andrew Whitworth and Robert Woods. Those two had been leaders on the team since Sean McVay's first season in 2017. Both of them played a major role in changing the trajectory of the franchise. You also can't forget the departures of Austin Corbett, Johnny Hekker, Sebastian Joseph Day, Sony Michel, Eric Weddle, and Darius Williams. To fill a couple of those holes, they went out and signed Allen Robinson as well as Bobby Wagner to long-term deals. As for re-signings, they reached deals with Joe Noteboom and Brian Allen. And of course, coming off of their postseason performances, Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp were signed to massive extensions. With all of the key departures the roster went through, the coaching staff was no different. Kevin O'Connell, their offensive coordinator, was now about to become the new head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. With the reshuffling of the roster and coaching staff, it became clear right away that this was not going to be the same team from a year ago. But entering the season, you didn't really feel this team could repeat, but could still make the playoffs. You could say their 2022 problems began during OTAs. Matthew Stafford received an anti-inflammatory shot in his elbow during the offseason that kept him from throwing during OTAs. His throws were limited during training camp, but despite that, all indications pointed to the Rams still making the playoffs. But looking back, their Week 1 matchup against the Buffalo Bills set the tone for the entire season. While they were tied up at 10 during the first half, in the second half, they would get completely shut out, losing the game 31-10. Even though Stafford threw 3 interceptions, he was also sacked 7 times, one of which coming from his former teammate Von Miller. Even though they won their next 2 games, they came against the Atlanta Falcons and Arizona Cardinals. Those two weren't playoff caliber teams, and they only beat them by a combined 11 points. The real early season test was gonna come on Monday night in Week 4 against the rival San Francisco 49ers. If you were to describe this game using one play, I'd say Deebo Samuel's 57-yard touchdown where he completely trucks Jalen Ramsey is a good one, or maybe maybe you can go with Stafford's fourth quarter pick 6. It was obvious the Rams were having trouble stacking up against playoff caliber teams. They would lose to the Dallas Cowboys in week 5, but rebounded with a 14-point victory in week 6 to a Carolina Panthers team that had an interim head coach at this point. Entering their bye week, the Rams had a 500 record of 3-3, and if the season were to have ended after week 6, they would be the 7th seed in the playoffs. But during the bye week, some problems within the organization began to surface. Cam Akers was absent ahead of the game against the Carolina Panthers, which made it appear that there was a mutual disagreement between him and the team. McVay later admitted that the team was exploring potential trade options for Akers in an attempt to find a solution that was best for both parties. The trade deadline came and went. Cam Akers was still a Los Angeles Ram. When he was asked if McVay approached him about stepping away from the team, Akers said, "We'll keep it in-house. Whatever happened, it happened. We'll just move forward now." This very confusing situation certainly didn't help on the field. Their next 2 games would be lost against the 49ers and Buccaneers. Both of these losses were spirit-crushing in their own ways. Christian McCaffrey, who had recently joined the 49ers and who the Rams were looking into trading for, was lighting them up in a 31-14 loss. Against Tampa Bay late in the fourth quarter, with the Rams leading 13-9, their defense had just stopped Tom Brady in the red zone. They had a chance to run out the clock on the ensuing possession, but failed to do so. With a minute remaining, Brady led another game-winning drive. With minimal time left to score, the Rams failed to answer and lost to the Buccaneers 16-13. Jalen Ramsey publicly expressed his frustrations with the offense, going on to say, "We have so many games where the defense will get a stop and we'll get on the sideline and be like, y'all stay locked in, y'all stay locked in, y'all gonna have to go back out there again. It shouldn't be like that. We gotta have some dogs who are gonna be like, we're gonna close this shit out." For the rest of the season, it never got any better. After their bye week, they went on to lose 6 straight games. In week 11 against the New Orleans Saints, Stafford had left the game after being evaluated for a concussion. He later said that he felt some numbness in his legs after taking a hit. It was later revealed he suffered a spinal contusion, an injury that's potentially career-threatening. A few days later, Darrell Henderson Jr. was released out of the blue. In another situation that provided more questions than answers, Henderson expressed his feelings on his release with these 2 emojis. In week 12 against Kansas City, Sean McVay was hit right in the face by one of his players' helmets while trying to run on the field. Then before their week 13 game against Seattle, it was announced that Cooper Kupp would be shut down for the rest of the season after suffering an ankle sprain against the Cardinals in week 10. Then finally, before their Christmas Day game against the Denver Broncos, Aaron Donald would be shut down for the rest of the season with a high ankle sprain. After their bye week, the Rams finished out their final 11 games with a 2-9 record. So what led to the 2022 Rams having the worst Super Bowl hangover in NFL history? Injuries to your quarterback or all-pro players are going to affect any team, but when it's both, oh my gosh. Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Aaron Donald, who had all played prominent roles in the Super Bowl run, were all lost to injury by season's end. They also finished with the 3rd most players on injured reserve. Key departures from team leaders, as well as new additions not panning out, and drama within the organization certainly doesn't help. But the granddaddy of them all was the infamous offensive line. While the Rams' defense was below average, their offense was bad with a capital B, only averaging just over 280 yards per game, ranking them dead last in the NFL. Losing your all-pros later on in the season to injury is one thing, but when your offensive line is not only bad, but also injury prone, that's a whole nother issue itself. It doesn't matter how good your skill positions are. Without an offensive line, you have no shot. In just the first 11 games alone, the Rams started 11 different offensive line combinations. No team since the 1970 AFL-NFL merger has done that. They gave up the third most sacks and had a rushing attack averaging less than 100 yards per game. The 2022 season marked the end of an era for the Rams, as the roster entering 2023 looks damn near unrecognizable to their Super Bowl season in 2021. Going all in for a championship has a cost, and in 2022, the Rams had to pay up. When Jalen Ramsey told his teammates, "I'm leaving here with something" on the sidelines during the season finale, you got the idea on what was about to take place during the offseason. More players from the Super Bowl run are gone. Jalen Ramsey, Leonard Floyd, Greg Gaines, Nick Scott, Taylor Rapp, and Matt Gay. Even additions from the previous offseason in Bobby Wagner and Allen Robinson are gone. The rest of the league is watching the Rams rebuild with intrigue. Why, you may ask? Because if they're able to rebuild quickly, perhaps you may see more teams use the all-in approach. But for now, the 2022 Los Angeles Rams remain a cautionary tale, proof that there is a price to pay for giving up a ton of draft capital and salary cap for one season of glory. When you stack them up with the 7 other Super Bowl teams that went on to have a losing record the following season, they are by far the worst, with the biggest eye-opening stat not being the overall record, but them being the only team out of this group that failed to score a victory against a team with a winning record. Just off of that stat alone, the 2022 Los Angeles Rams season should be regarded as the worst Super Bowl hangover in NFL history.